Dust choked the air in Redemption Ridge, curling in little devil whirls along the main street where boots had worn the earth smooth. The sun had risen sharp and high, white as bone, and the gallows stood crooked and silent beside the courthouse, freshly hammered from pine that still smelled of sap and sawdust. Sheriff Langston watched from the steps, arms folded tight across his chest. His badge was dulled by sand and time, his eyes harder than the iron bars he'd once helped fit into the jailhouse windows. He didn't speak much, and when he did, it wasn't to comfort anyone, especially not today. Inside, the courthouse hummed with heat and quiet dread. Wood creaked under restless boots. A boy in the back row chewed his knuckles. Miss Tilly, the preacher's wife, clutched her Bible like it might stop what was about to happen. Clay Rourke sat at the center of it all, bound hand and foot, shoulders back, face calm. He was the kind of man you couldn't read unless you knew the wind and the way it changed before a storm. 6 months ago, they dragged him in from the canyon north of the ridge, bloodied but unbroken, the last man standing from a payroll robbery gone wrong. 3 soldiers dead, government gold vanished, and Clay with no explanation, just silence and a slow nod when the charges were read. The town never got over that nod. Judge Harrow entered with a scrape of boots, white hair slicked back, black coat too heavy for the weather. He moved with a deliberate air, like justice itself might falter if he hurried. Behind him trailed the clerk, 2 guards, and a rustle of paper like dry leaves in windless air. Court is now in session, the clerk announced, though everyone already knew it. Clay didn't rise. Shackles clinked when he breathed. His eyes, gray as stormwater, never left the judge's face. Judge Harrow settled behind the bench and cleared his throat. Clay Rourke, you stand convicted by 12 good men and women of this territory. Theft, murder, conspiracy against the Union. Do you understand the weight of these charges? I do, Clay said, the first words he'd spoken in weeks. His voice was low, flat, like the scrape of a boot on gravel. The judge nodded. You've been given chance to appeal. You declined. Any last statement before sentencing is delivered. The room held its breath. Clay looked to the gallery, not at the faces, but past them, past wood, past walls. Somewhere else entirely. I've got nothing to say that hasn't already been buried. The judge shifted, hand poised to deliver the sentence. Then the door slammed open. Heads turned. Gasps followed like gunshots. A woman stood in the threshold, hat askew, face streaked with road dust and sweat. Her coat hung loose, skirt torn at the hem, boots worn to the sole. She walked in like she owned the room, like she'd ridden through fire and wouldn't think twice about going back. I promised I'd marry him one day, she said. Judge Harrow froze, hand still raised. No one moved. Clay blinked. Just once. Sheriff Langston's hand dropped to his holster, but she didn't flinch. The silence thickened. I know what he did. The woman went on. I know what he didn't do, too. You're about to hang the wrong man. Langston stepped forward. Ma'am, this here's a sentencing. You ain't. I'm Elena Graves, she said, loud enough to make the rafters quiver. And I rode 200 miles to stop this farce. Clay lowered his eyes, slow as dusk. Miss Graves, said the judge carefully, this is no place for romantic gestures. This isn't about romance. It's about truth. Her voice cracked, not from emotion, but from exhaustion. And I've got proof that he's not the man you say he is. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. One man stood. Another cursed under his breath. Judge Harrow leaned forward, studying her like she was a relic from another time. You understand that if you're lying, if this is some last-minute ploy, you could face charges yourself. I'm not lying, she said. I've got letters. Signed. I've got a soldier's journal with names. A pardon issued from back east that never reached this town. And I've got a dead man's confession. Clay looked up then, his jaw tightening. His lips parted, but he didn't speak. The judge glanced toward Sheriff Langston, then back to Elena, then presented. You've bought him one day, Miss Graves. That's all I'll give. A shiver moved through the room, not from cold, but from the way truth, once spoken, cannot be caged again. Clay let out a slow breath, more felt than heard. The gallows outside waited. But so did something else now. Something just beginning. They gave her a room above the saloon, and one night to prove what 6 months of justice had already decided. Elena paced the boards until her legs gave out, then spread her satchel on the bed. Pages creased with sweat, dried blood, and road dust. Names scribbled in the margins of a journal whose author had died coughing up river water and regret. Sheriff Langston had taken her saddlebag for evidence, but he hadn't taken the letter sewn into her coat's lining, nor the silver locket with initials burned into its back. J.C. Jesse Crow. The name was ash in her mouth. She hadn't said it in court. Not yet. Not until she had the nail to finish the coffin. Without proof Jesse lived and Clay didn't kill, it would be her word against the hangman's rope. Elena stared out the window at the scaffold, pale and skeletal against the moon. She thought of Clay's face, unreadable, unmoved, but she knew what was buried beneath. She'd seen it once, a decade ago. Back then, the ranch was green, the sky kinder. She was 17 and fearless, the youngest daughter of a family that believed the West could be tamed by hard work and calloused hands. Then came the rustlers. Then came the fire. Clay Rourke had arrived the same way he always did, without warning and ready to bleed for someone else's peace. He took a bullet, saving her brother. Never asked for thanks. Stayed just long enough to help bury the dead and mend the fence line. They'd sat under the juniper tree one night, silence thick as honey, and she told him, "One day I'll marry a man like you." He had looked away, almost angry. "Don't wait for ghosts, girl." Then he was gone. Now, 10 years later, she was chasing his. Morning came like a slap. She saddled up a borrowed horse and left without fanfare. Sheriff Langston gave her one day, and she planned to use every mile of it. The trail westward cut through dry creek beds and canyons, split by wind and time. By noon, the sun boiled her breath away, and the mare stumbled on a loose stone, nearly throwing her. But Elena pressed on. Behind her, Redemption Ridge shrank into dust. Ahead, Coyote Bluffs rose jagged against the sky. She wasn't following signs. There were none. She followed memory. Whispers. Once long ago, Clay had mentioned a man named Otis who saw more than most, a relic of war and whiskey who hadn't left the bluffs since the spring of '67. She found his shack tucked into stone like it was trying to hide. Smoke trickled from a cracked pipe wedged in the window. A mule brayed. The place smelled of old tobacco, rusted tools, and solitude. She knocked once. Nothing. Then twice. The door creaked. A face emerged, creased, scorched by sun, eyes milky white. "Blind Otis. You ain't wind," he muttered. "So speak or leave." "Elena Graves. I need to ask you about Jesse Crow." The name snapped the air. "You come looking for trouble or truth?" "Truth. Clay Rourke's gonna hang by sunset tomorrow unless I find it." Otis leaned against the doorframe. "Hell of a man to hang." "Then help me stop it." He waved her in. Inside, the shack was shadow and silence. Otis sat by a table, fingers twitching near a battered cigar box. "I was there," he said after a while. "I saw it all. Jesse planned that job. Clay tried to back out once he saw there'd be blood. Said it wasn't what he signed up for. Jesse laughed in his face. Called him a ghost, just like always." Elena's throat tightened. Clay fired one warning shot. The others didn't. Soldiers died. Clay didn't kill them. Didn't stop it neither. But he took the fall, 'cause Jesse was his kin in war. "Can you swear to this?" "I'm blind, not brainless." Otis opened the box. Inside, a locket. The same one Elena had in her coat, but this had blood dried around the hinge. "Jesse left this with me. Said if the law ever came sniffing, I should toss it in the river." "Then why didn't you?" "'Cause Clay was the only man in that gang with a soul." Elena took the locket. "Will you come with me? I'm half dead and whole blind. But you got my word. That and this." He handed her a slip of paper, shaky handwriting, a confession dated 3 months ago. "Found him dying near Snake Spine Pass. Bullet in his gut. Wrote this down for me. Thought it might balance his scale." She clutched it like salvation. "Thank you." She was 3 steps outside when the shot rang out. The mule screamed. Dust exploded around her. Another crack echoed from the ridge. Elena dove behind a rock. They'd been followed. Gunfire tore across the canyon mouth. 2 riders, dark hats, rifles drawn. She recognized the mark on one saddlebag. Vulture Canyon Gang. Jesse's old crew. They knew. She fired once, twice. One rider dropped, tumbling off his horse. The other charged closer. Then a shadow moved, quiet, fast. A figure stepped from the bluff edge, rifle raised. 3 clean shots. The second rider toppled. Silence returned like a curtain drawn. Elena turned toward her savior. Clay Rourke stood on the bluff, rifle still warm in his hand. Eyes on her like she was something he'd both feared and needed. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "I made a promise," she whispered. He climbed down without a word, helped her to her feet, checked her arm, bleeding, but not deep. "You didn't run," she said. "Didn't need to. You brought enough fight for both of us." She offered the letter. "I have what we need." He nodded once. Then he handed her the reins. "Let's go home." The ride back to Redemption Ridge cut through a silence sharper than broken glass. Elena led the way. Her injured arm pressed against her ribs. Reins looped loosely through her good hand. Clay rode behind, rifle across his lap, eyes never still. The sun crept westward, dragging long shadows over the trail, and the scent of gunpowder still clung to their clothes, like smoke after a barn fire. Blood marked their path in places, drops from her graze, splashes from the ambush. Ravens circled behind them, lazy and knowing. The trail to Coyote Bluffs had turned red, and though they were headed home, it felt anything but. "I thought you were locked up," Elena said, not turning around. Clay's voice came low. "I was. And you just walked out." "I waited for the guard shift. Sheriff Langston always leaves a blind spot around dusk. I found it." Elena risked a glance. "Won't that hurt your chances?" "I reckon the truth will weigh more than a busted lock." "You always gamble that way." He gave a small smile. "Only when the stakes matter." They passed a wind-stripped tree, bare as bone. A coyote watched from a rise, then vanished into the scrub. Clay's gaze lingered there. "I didn't know Jesse'd gone full outlaw," he said after a long silence. "We rode together during the war. Saved each other more than once. When he asked for help on that job, said it was a favor, I didn't ask enough questions." "You trusted him," she said. "Worse, I thought I owed him. Turned out, I owed the truth more." The horses clopped over dry earth. Far off, thunder rumbled, or maybe it was just the wind scraping through canyon hollows. "You still wearing that locket?" he asked. She touched her coat. "I carried it through fire. I didn't forget what you did for my family." He looked away. "I didn't do it for them." They rode until the sky turned bruise purple and Redemption Ridge's outer posts came into view. The gallows still stood tall against the dying light. It looked more skeletal now, less a structure, more a threat. Elena's stomach twisted. At the edge of town, Sheriff Langston waited on horseback, 2 deputies flanking him. His hat was pulled low, jaw clenched, eyes locked on Clay. "You broke jail," he said without preamble. Clay nodded. "Didn't run. Just bought us time." Langston's gaze shifted to Elena. "You get what you needed?" "I did," she said, pulling the confession from her coat. "Otis gave me this. Jesse Crow wrote it before he bled out near Snake Spine Pass. It clears Clay. Names. Explains everything. Langston didn't reach for it. That's so." She held it higher. "You can ride out and find the body if you want. Otis buried him under a stone cross. Clay didn't kill those men. He tried to stop the whole thing." The sheriff dismounted, boots thudding against the dirt. He took the letter, read it slow. His eyes narrowed, his mouth a thin line. One deputy moved forward, then paused. "This signature," Langston muttered. "It's Jesse's. And that locket he left with Otis," Elena added. "Same one you got in evidence. Both real." Langston looked up. "That confession's enough to stop the hanging. But it ain't enough to convince the town Clay didn't run with killers. He needs more than ink on paper." "I'll stand in that courtroom," she said. "I'll tell them everything." The sheriff's gaze flicked between her and Clay, then softened, just barely. "You're lucky," he said. "The judge hasn't rung the bell yet. He gave you till nightfall." Clay handed over his rifle without being asked. No more running. Langston took it, nodded once, and turned his horse toward the courthouse. The walk through town was different now. Folks watched from windows, doorways, shadows. Whispers coiled around them. "That's her. He's back." She brought the outlaw back with her. But Elena didn't look away. She walked beside Clay like the gallows didn't exist, like the truth would hold. Inside the courthouse, oil lamps flickered. Judge Harrow sat at the bench, eyes colder than morning steel. "You again," he said. Elena stepped forward, with more than words this time. She passed the confession across the bench. The judge read in silence, breath shallow. Then he leaned back. "Jesse Crow. That name's been haunting this court longer than I care to admit." He looked to Clay. "Seems you took the fall for a ghost." Clay said nothing. He didn't have to. The judge raised his voice. "This court acknowledges new evidence. Sentence is hereby suspended. Mr. Rourke, you are to remain under supervision pending formal review, but the gallows will not claim you." The room exhaled, but then came the sound, clear and deliberate, the creak of floorboards and the unmistakable cock of a rifle. A man stepped from the gallery's back row, eyes sunken, coat bulging at the shoulder. "That man deserves the rope. That gang took my brother." "Put the gun down," Langston ordered. But the man didn't. Clay stepped forward. Elena whispered, "No." Clay raised his hands. "Your brother didn't die by my bullet." "That make it better?" the man shouted. "No," Clay said, "but it means you're pointing your grief in the wrong damn direction." The gun trembled, then dropped. Langston moved fast, cuffed the man, hauled him out. Silence returned. Outside, the gallows cast a long, fading shadow. The bell never rang, and in that fading light, Elena reached for Clay's hand. Not for protection, not for show, but because, in the end, she had always meant what she said. "I promised I'd marry you one day," she said softly. He looked at her like the world had finally made sense. "You still sure about that?" "I was never unsure." And behind them, Redemption Ridge held its breath for what might come next.